Hello, welcome everybody to the HeadHunter Hideout. This is your host, Joel Lalgee. I'm super excited today. We've got a great guest, but I'm also curious about who's out there. So let me know if you're out there. Let me know who is out there. Just tell me your name and the part of the world you're in as well. I'd love to hear that. And then if you've got questions too, definitely ask us some questions. You're going to want to, I'm sure there's going to be some questions from this conversation, but Tim, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to give us a brief background on yourself and what you're up to, and then we'll get into today's show. But welcome onto the show, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks, Joel, for having me. It's been great to get to know you over the last several months, year or so. I really enjoy what you're doing. Thanks for everyone who's joining for little old me and listening to the podcast version of this. My name's Tim Schumm. I'm the founder and president of Lucas James Talent Partners. We're an on-demand RPO firm. Based out of Chicago. We're currently about 110 team members, and I think we'll kind of go into what is on-demand RPO, where does it fit, how we kind of came up with this. Prior to starting this business in July of 2018, so we're about 3 years old, I spent my entire corporate career in the recruiting and staffing space. So I was at Aerotech, which is under the Lalgee Group umbrella, which is a sister company of Tech Systems, if the audience is in the IT space. And I had a bunch of different roles there: recruiter, outside salesperson. I got into a national sales capacity for a couple of years. And then my last role there, I was running a good portion of our Chicagoland market from a leadership perspective, about 100 folks, 20-person sales team, recruiters. So I'm very familiar with the human capital space, the contingent, retained search, temp to perm, direct hire. Now we're doing a little bit something different at Lucas James, which I've mentioned we'll get into. But that's the high level on me. Thanks for having me.
So I'm curious, do you how did you initially get into the space? I mean, what kind of drew you into the recruitment space, and how did you get started?
Yeah, so born in New York, raised in Chicago. I currently sit out of the Chicagoland area. I was always kind of, I don't know, lacked direction, a little bit of a knucklehead. I wouldn't call myself the class clown, but I did like stand-up comedy in high school and in college.
That's awesome. Do you have any recordings?
So many times. I do. Yeah, I got some like VHS tapes of me doing it.
So that's got to go on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I'm all about the content, so you got to put one of those out.
We'll pull some clips. Yeah, I did that quite a bit, and I think like didn't know it at the time, but you know, when you're doing that, your fear around public speaking or speaking up in a group setting, in a class setting with the team, like that was very helpful in the career. So, anyways, I was like a B-, C+ kind of student in high school. Went to Purdue University, kind of the same thing. I kind of like floundered a little bit in my college years. I always kind of joke that I was a 2.85. I rounded up to 3.0 on the resume. And I just wasn't getting a lot of direction either externally, or I wasn't putting it on myself to find out what occupations are out there, what industries are out there. Someone that's just a year older than me that I went to college with started at Aerotech as a recruiter, and we kept in touch and enjoyed it, was doing well, and enjoyed the team members that he was working with, got me an interview, and like that's it. And I know, you know, when I talk to folks, like we all find this industry in different ways, and that's just my story. So I started at Aerotech a couple of weeks after graduating university back in 2006. Very
cool. And I know Aerotech obviously has just great training, and I know they're it's a pretty competitive environment as well, but obviously they just are really, really well known, and they train people up really well.
I'm super proud of where I came from.
Yeah.
Like we're in a big industry. It's a $150 billion industry. Statistics show that there's 20,000 recruiting and staffing firms all doing a bunch of different stuff in the space that we play in. But there was always something that I was intrigued by. Two folks in a basement, 1983, started it from scratch, did $1 million, the first full year. And over like a 40-year period, one new customer at a time, one new hire at a time, one new branch location at a time. There wasn't like venture capital put into it. There wasn't like a ton of M&A activity. Really an organic growth story to become the number 1 or number 2, number 3 player in all the industry segments
it's amazing
that they played in. So, when I look back at my time there, and hey, like the industry, like Aerotech, like there's reasons that I left and stuff. I wanted to start my own business, but they did a lot of things right that I'm just super proud of my time there. And I pull a lot of what I do today from my 10 years that I was there.
Yeah, I think anyone I've ever met from Aerotech is just super hardworking and just very, very driven. So, what point in your own career did you start thinking about doing your own thing? Was that something that kind of developed over time, or you just knew right away once you started in recruitment, like, hey, I want to kind of own my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur?
I started learning about entrepreneurship, what equity meant, bios on people's stories and how they became successful. So it was around my like senior year in college that I really kind of straightened up. Like I was this like class clown, kind of knucklehead, wasn't going to class all the time, didn't treat school or like future career with respect. And I just kind of woke up and I was like, hey, my parents, like, money was a thing kind of growing up, and my wife now, I met her in college and things were getting serious. Like, how am I going to put food on the table? We're going to have kids, like kind of grow. Then I started to like follow entrepreneurship. I read Inc. magazine, Fast Company, not making any comparisons whatsoever, but Mark Zuckerberg is like my exact age. We're like a day apart. So in college, I was like, how is this guy a billionaire? And he's my age and I haven't even started my career yet. How is that? And I think that kind of like mental energy, it's kind of started me down a path of, hey, how could I do this moving forward? Like, what's my path? Is it recruitment? Is it something else? And it always just kind of stuck in the back of my head. So during my 10 years at Aerotech, there were several times that I was like, all right, I'm just going to quit and start now, like now's the time. And it was either like a good commission year, new accounts, or promotion that kind of kept me there. And I'm so glad it did, because I just learned so much. But ultimately, I know you have your second child on the way.
Right.
My firstborn, Lucas, was born in December of 2014. So major priority shift for me. And what do I want to be when I really grow up? Like, I either have to be a lifer here and get promoted, maybe be the president of Aerotech, move to Baltimore, or I got to rip the Band-Aid off and, start my own thing and follow that path.
Yeah. No, man, I love that. So walk us through, I mean, obviously you have the 10 years at Aerotech, and then you're off solo and kind of doing things in a different way. Why don't you first of all explain to us what InDemand RPO is, and explain to us what that model looks like? Because I think it's probably unfamiliar to most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll start by like taking a giant step back and just looking at the industry as a whole and the way that we interact with customers from a engagement standpoint and financial standpoint as like contract staffing providers. So if you look at our industry, it's a $150 billion industry, 20,000 recruiting firms. 95% of us operate the exact same way, which is on a contingent basis, which means, as everybody should know, the customer doesn't have to put any money up front. They can sign a contract, but there's no exchange of commerce until a successful placement happens. So by and large, like our industry is a brokerage business. It's very much like real estate or insurance, like logistics brokerages. So when you're in a brokerage type model, there's certain benefits and then there's certain inefficiencies within that. So some of the benefits for the customer is it's an easy sales process. You don't have to pay anything and we'll work on stuff for free. And once we make a placement, then you have to pay. That's a huge benefit, right? You can pick up business pretty quickly. It's a relationship capital business.
Yeah, it's risk
pretty
free,
quickly.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Low barriers to entry. And then we can kind of plant a flag and open up shop and compete with the big boys and the big girls. So under that model, though, to compete there, and I spent 10 years and what I would consider, like we did things pretty well at Aerotech. Like we were very, very efficient, but I picked my head up and I looked at it and I had about a 65-person recruiting team at the peak. And if I was being honest with myself, only about like 30% of my recruiting team's time went monetized, meaning like we got paid for it, they got paid commissions for it. And then you ask yourself, like, why is that? So because it's a brokerage model where the client doesn't have to pay anything up front, they're incentivized to avoid you and fill it on their own with their internal HR department. They're incentivized to, hey, let me call this out to 3 or 4 or 5 companies at the exact same time. Yeah. Let them kind of compete over it, right? And all these other things in between. And hey, I was working on this and now I can't get a call back. I've been working on this for 2 weeks, kind of what happens. So we called that wash racks in the past. So all these things happen that I think everyone that's listening knows about. So when you look at that internally, that's a very inefficient business model. You should be monetizing 100% of your team's time. But if you're only monetizing 30 or 40%, then you have to basically pay for that underutilized capacity. Like you have to find a way to pay for that other 70%. So that's why our industry charges 20, 25, sometimes 30% of first year salary. It's not because we're that good in a lot of cases. It's because that's what everybody does. And we have to charge that amount of money, not because like the owners are making 50% net income margins. They need that just to keep the lights on because it's so inefficient. And if you look at the recruiting team too, and everybody I would imagine knows this, it's a grind. If you're only like, you're doing a good job and stuff that's outside of your control is impacting your ability to make commissions, like that's why we have a lot of turnover. That's why as a leader under this model, it was really hard for me to maintain a team without having high turnover. Is because, you know, people get burnt out with this. And, you know, the people that were working with good customers that would move quickly and their 100% of their time was monetized, like they stuck around. And then the folks that didn't have that situation typically left. And I just said, man, this is really inefficient. And to really do well under this model, you have to take the approach of get in early, stay late, outwork your competition. There's not a lot of inefficiencies within that in order to compete under that model. And after 10 years of doing it, I just kind of got burnt out. So really kind of getting to your question, unfortunately, I had a 2.5-year non-compete in our industry, and I totally respect that. And the reasons why that's there. It also gave me a little bit of time to take a breather. 10 years, head down, 60, 70 hours a week. So I became a business coach to small and medium-sized businesses as well as early stage tech companies during this time. So I would coach them on sales strategies and culture and promoting team members and accounting, finance stuff, and 4 or 5 customers at a time. And this allowed me to do a couple different things. One is to build my network, knowing that I would start Lucas James Talent Partners, and I need relationship capital to kind of get off the ground started. The second thing, and most important, was I started to look at what that business model for me needed to be. And I started to research the RPO space. RPO, for those that don't know, it stands for Recruiting Process Outsourcing. I think the technical definition is when a company outsources a portion or the entire recruitment function for a specified period of time. So when you look at that space, you might have heard of companies like Korn Ferry's got a big RPO, People Scout, Wilson Human Capital Group, CLO, a sister company of Aerotech, Allegis Global Solutions. There's about 10 or 12 major players that are winning all the business. And when you do some research, they only focus on the Fortune 500. Multinational, big deals. There's like 60 to 500 recruiters attached at any given time. They're multi-year contracts. And the reason that these companies do it, they're not stupid, is because if they pay as they go, they don't need to be charged for that inefficiency. So they're getting a cost-effective solution. They allow their customers to scale them up and down based on hiring demand, because as you know, like hiring's not stagnant. You have a busy month and you have an off month, you have a busy quarter, or you're just in rapid growth and you don't know if that's going to be sustained. And so it's flexible and it's dedicated. Some of the issues that our customers at Aerotech had were, I don't know if these staffing vendors are working on my stuff or not.
Yeah.
I'm not paying them, so I can't really hold them to anything. They're telling me they're working on it, but they might be working on easier stuff, right? So there's a lot of benefits to RPO from a customer standpoint. But when you look at the mid-market and some of my consulting client base, these rapidly growing tech companies, there's really not a good solution out there. If you're rapidly growing and you have an inefficient internal HR and talent acquisition department, your options are do it in-house, figure it out, add overhead and a cost center to what you're currently doing, or you outsource it to the traditional firms that are out there and you're getting charged 20 to 30% per head, right? So I looked at an opening in the market to provide the RPO model on an on-demand basis and bring the benefits down to the mid-market. So companies in the neighborhood of as low as 100 employees up to 10,000 employees that might not need that, very strategic, bring an RPO in for 5 years kind of model, but I need bandwidth right away on my internal team. So that's what we do. So we have a team of mid-level and senior level full life cycle recruiters. We have candidate sourcing specialists, and our clients hire us on an hourly or weekly fee basis to act as an extension of their talent acquisition department, either during busy periods or as a strategic long-term partner. And we do this by bringing power back to the internal talent acquisition department. Best way to do talent acquisition is in-house. That's the most efficient way. That's the best talent branding. It's the best candidate experience. We wouldn't be talking. We wouldn't have a $150 billion industry if companies could always do it on their own.
Yeah.
But the next best thing, in my opinion, is to find a partner like us when you're busy and you have volume openings, to do it more cost effectively, to have a variable partner where your costs associated with outsourced talent acquisition are 100% variable based on what your demand is at any given time. So I'll finish with, we work with companies at the tech community. So think of a Series A, Series B, C, D. Company gets an influx of cash from a venture capital firm, $20 to $200 million. Where does that cash go? It's salaries of individuals for the most part. They need to go hire a bunch of people. It causes a reactionary hiring scenario for their internal team to say, what are we going to do? Right? So we partner with these companies and we give them 2 to 10 resources for a specified period of time, but they have the flexibility to scale down if they need to. And we help out with those hiring ramps, right? And then on the flip side, we're working with middle market companies that might, just need a partner because A, they're spending way too much on contingent search firms on a consistent basis, or B, they just don't know if they need to hire an internal recruiter or not. So they're looking for a flexible partner that they can bring in and act as an internal recruiter for them.
I love it. And how long has Lucas James been around for? It's like 3 years, I want to say.
We just hit our 3-year mark.
Okay, yeah, so you just hit your 3-year mark. And how many employees do you have?
We have 110.
110. So, that right there speaks for itself in terms of scalability of what you're doing. Because again, when we look at how many agencies there are, 20,000 agencies, what is it? 85% of them are less than 10 people, maybe even more than that. And it kind of points back to the contingent model, just being, it's hard to predict. It's hard to know. It's hard to predict revenue, what the revenue is going to be. There's a lot of issues there. So when you're hiring people for your team, like what do you look for? Because I know you're hiring right now. You're looking to bring on 30 new people, you said?
We need an additional 30 like yesterday, and it's a really tight market in order to execute on that number. But yeah, we're looking for people. We're growing.
So how would you say like a role at Lucas James differs to other agencies, or like what are the types of things that you look for in a recruiter and that works well on your team?
I think most recruiters, when they look at their like career mapping, they say, all right, I got 2 options. I can stay in the agency world, right? And I can be part of an agency and have some big years and maybe kind of get into leadership, or I can go the corporate route and I could become internal talent acquisition and maybe work my way up in that respect. So to kind of define those 2, staffing agencies are typically lower base salary. You could have the potential, like the top 10% of recruiters at agencies typically are making a lot of money. They're doing very well. That median is driven down a little bit, but they also have all the headaches that we kind of talked about with the inefficiencies of the model. And then corporate recruiters typically have a higher base salary, but their variable is a lot lower. It's either 0 or a percentage potential, or hey, if the company does well, but you're kind of relying on your base salary. And we're kind of in the middle in both. And corporate recruiters, like, they don't have to deal with the headaches of washed recs or competition, or they can build relationships with their hiring managers, and there's a lot of benefits there. We're right in the middle on kind of everything, right? So we can offer, based on how our financial model is set up, higher base salaries for agency recruiters to come in, but we can also have that variable component to make a recruiter whole within their total compensation. And then from a day-to-day perspective, you're still kind of getting that agency feel where we're a team. Hey, when we win a customer, when we make a placement, we're high-fiving. We're talking about it all the time. We're at the point now where we're placing about 50 people a week, and it is true excitement because every placement that we have, there's opportunity that's created for somebody on our team through a promotion, through, hey, maybe we can add another salesperson on the team to continue to grow this thing and continue to create opportunity. That said, the day-to-day is very similar to a corporate recruiter, right? So because our customer is paying us 100% for what we do, and as we go, they're incentivized not to create competition for us.
Right. Exactly.
Call it out to other agencies. Like, they're telling their hiring managers, make sure you get back to Lucas James Talent Partners because we're paying them. Like, don't let time pass. It's a tight market. You got to get feedback to them right away. You have to be very clear in your intake with the Lucas James team and what you're looking for, because we're paying them from there to go search. So it's very much like corporate talent acquisition from a day-to-day perspective, with the element of team growth, creating opportunity for people as we grow as a greater good.
So when we're looking at the market right now, for example, which is just such a flip side of what it was a year ago, where it seemed like a year ago people were really uncertain and they were wondering, why aren't I seeing open jobs, or a lot of my clients have things on hold, and now it's like a year later, a year and a half later, and everybody's hiring. Candidates it's a massive shortage. How do you see like your type of model where it's more partnership based recruitment? Do you see that eventually just being about a solution and eclipsing contingent or retained, or is this still, do you think there'll always be that contingent retained element? Because I'm seeing a lot more models like this pop up as well, like the on demand, kind of like outsourced contract partnership type recruiting come about. So in your mind, do you just see this as the future, and it's just a matter of time for clients to get educated on these types of solutions? Or do you think there'll always be that contingent full desk agency that's out there? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so first of all, we're not a fit for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we make sense when the internal team has more permanent positions and a volume of permanent positions.
What would you say that ratio is? Like, what's realistic? Like, at what point do you go, okay, your internal team, say you've got a team of 5 and they're working on 70 recs. Like, what's the ideal ratio that you found?
Yeah, if you have 5 recs at any given time to keep our recruiter busy, and then once we fill something, you add another one, like, that's all it needs to be. And the alternative is overworking your team, or like farming out 5 recs at a 25% fee, right? So that's like the pinpoint, and that could be a small company where they don't have an HR talent people infrastructure just yet, and like, we're playing that role. But that could also be a bigger company that's just going through an influx, right? So I'll get into like the current market dynamics kind of in a second. But to your question about like, what is this just a better model overall? I don't think so. Like, we're perfect, and it's like a dumb not to approach with the right customer at the right time. Now, when you think of like temp to perm contractors, like, I don't see that going away for manufacturing. I don't see that going away for high volume skill sets like call center, or pit type of environments where you need to hire a lot of people, and the
like healthcare,
trying before you buy. Yeah, and then it's some of those more technical, like consultant based type of like business models. So you mentioned like healthcare, like traveling nurses, like, you're going to need a good healthcare staffing partner, and there's a lot of opportunity there. IT, like, if you need to do an ERP implementation and you need like 20 people for a year, like, you're going to go to a staffing company for that. Like, we can't help with that. But if you're relying, because of inefficiency, on just a model that like we've just gotten used to since the 1950s when Kelly Services and Robert Half International started, then I would urge people to look at models like Lucas James, or we can get into detail. There's a ton of other like strategic solutions out there that might be a good fit for some of these companies. Now, what happened, the first part of your question, we had a 10-year bull run, like 08-09 recession. Like, I was a salesperson during that time. That sucked at Aerotech, especially starting my sales career.
What a great,
that environment.
On retrospect, what a great time to start a sales career, because it's just like the hardest possible time. So if you can make it through that, I mean, come on.
Totally. Absolutely. But to the benefit of the environment, 2010 through 2020, there was consistent growth. There was low unemployment, the lowest unemployment percentage since the Great Depression. I think companies got used to growth, and then playbooks around growth, and then HR talent playbooks around growth. So companies got used to, like, these are the vendors that I work with, and I go to an agency for this, and I go to an agency for that, and I'm going to try to do as much as I can in-house. And then, hey, my leadership just got out of a meeting and we're adding headcount again. Like, we got used to that. And then in March of 2020, the rug got pulled under everybody, right? So you went from the lowest unemployment since the Great Depression overnight to the highest unemployment since the Great Depression, right? And every industry was affected. Companies were questioning their finances, their hiring decisions, like how we're tackling this internally. And it was a bloodbath last year. So if you look at the HR leader, they had a lot on their plate last year. Like, shout out to anyone that's corporate HR people, talent, like, and we'll put us in there too, because we all got affected by this, but the folks that were responsible for leading the talent HR people organization, they had to lay off their teams last year. 20-person recruiting teams went down to 2, 10-person recruiting teams went down to 1, 5-person recruiting teams. Like now the director of talent acquisition is the sole recruiter. Like that happened last year. Now we're a remote environment. Like that's on the people leader. How do we create a culture here? Like how do we communicate with our team? That was on the HR leader. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, wrong, or indifferent. It was like 10x the priority last year and now than it was previously for everything that was going on. So the HR leaders had so much kind of stuff going on. And then I think once companies had like figured out how we operate in this COVID remote environment, then industry started to kind of pick back up. Then the venture capital and private equity checkbooks started to open up quite a bit. And we kind of jerked the wheel right back to where we were going. And for us, we were able to benefit in a couple of ways from that. One was as companies started to hire again, the HR leader was kind of stuck. The CFOs were basically saying, hey, don't use those high fee-based agencies. We got to avoid overhead costs at all costs. Oh, by the way, we're going to hire in some areas, but we're not going to be able to get your recruiter again. Not just yet. We don't want to add any headcount to our cost centers just yet. I don't view it as a cost center, but CFOs do in a lot of cases. Yeah. And we were this nice little cost-effective, flexible, call us on a Tuesday. We can get you some bandwidth and resources the following Monday kind of play. And so from August of last year to now, we saw a lot of growth. And I think that's obviously cascaded into other areas of the market. Every agency that you're talking to is slammed right now, so, kind of goes in waves, but there was definitely a jerk of the wheel last year for sure.
Well, Lisa just asked, she just said, what is your turnaround time from the order to the candidate in the seat? Which I'm sure it ranges, but any insights into that? I mean, you kind of touched upon it there. But how do you incentivize people to fill roles quicker if you're on, if you kind of monetize for your time 100%, if that makes sense?
So we are monetized 100% of our time, but our financial model is that 90% is retainer. It's hourly. So you're paying for the resource. We have a success fee. It's very modest. It's 1.5% of first year salary, $100K placement, $1,500 gets added to the invoice at the 90-day mark. So we have a guarantee there. That's the commission mechanism for our team. Like they don't know any better, right? They're just, hey, if I fill all these recs and they turn us off, like Tim and the sales team is going to put me on something else. So they're incentivized to fill things as quickly as possible, just like an agency recruiter is. Now to your question, I get that all the time. Like, hey, how long does it take? When am I going to start seeing results? It's such a loaded question when you're talking about a model where, like, think about it. You're adding an internal recruiter that's starting day one, right? Now we have tools and resources and we provide management. So we manage our team, but think about it the same way. Like that recruiter is going to need to learn the business for a little bit. You're probably giving them 5 to 10 recs at any given time. So when they're going to fill the first one, there's a lot of variables there. What's the difficulty of the skill set? Are you paying market rate? What's your Glassdoor reviews look like? If we have a client with crappy Glassdoor reviews, we have to talk to about 3 times as many candidates than a customer B that has really good Glassdoor reviews. So the way that I would answer that is, how long does it take your current team? We're going to come in and get up to speed with a senior resource as quickly as possible. And then we have all the AI outreach automation tools that, a world-class agency would have. So we can maybe optimize our client's process as well. So we're more of a bandwidth play than, hey, I need a mechanical engineer as quickly as possible. What's my solution for that? Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it's a great question. I know, and we had Sebastian out there as well. I just said hi. So hi, Sebastian. Then Matt said, very insightful, great combo. Thus far, but yeah, if you guys have other questions too, get into the chat. Let's talk about I'm curious to hear, and I know you kind of alluded to this earlier, but you mentioned that Aerotech, and this isn't just Aerotech, this is kind of across our industry, and it's something I've noticed that turnover at recruitment firms is really, really high, and it's hard to retain good talent. So I'm curious, how this model, obviously you've grown your team a lot. Do you think the way that you guys work impacts kind of overall satisfaction of employees as well? And it's easier to retain talent on your end specifically. And, even just like with dealing with things like burnout and that type of thing, which you see in agencies, like how does working at Lucas James compare to that? And like, I guess, is your turnover lower than you experienced in the past? Like how has that model impacted that?
So I think when you look at the agency model, and if I'm an agency owner and I'm dealing with lots of inefficiencies, I have to keep my costs low, right? I have to do whatever I can to keep my costs low, to keep my base salaries as low as possible, maybe pay a little bit more on the variable. Like I have to run the business that way because I just have a lot of inefficiency and I could go a month without a placement. So by nature, you see a lot of, like me, entry-level people and entering the industry. My first base salary was like $29,000 when I started my career, right? So I think across the industry, there's a playbook around, hey, go out to the universities, go to the community colleges, find some talent that you can train and, kind of like hire them young and cheap, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then I think within that model, and we've talked about this, there's just so many inefficiencies. There's a lot of headaches that causes burnout. So that's kind of high turnover. So we haven't lost anybody since May 1st, thankfully, which is great. It's kind of a great run. We've obviously added, 90 net team members since this time last year.
Wow.
So
amazing.
I'd be lying if we said we hadn't lost anybody. Our biggest attrition was around when there was so many layoffs in the industry. We were just picking up solid talent because we were the only one that was hiring. It was awesome. Now, what I didn't do was say, hey, do you really want a career in corporate recruitment? Like, hey, you were running a 5-person team before this. Like, are you going to stick around? So we lost some of those folks that when the industry kind of like came back and those opportunities were there, we lost some of those folks, right? And then the market's so tight right now where we've had a couple of people start and then like 2 days in, they're like, oh, sorry, Tim, just got another offer. Like I'm going to go here. So some of that kind of stuff has happened, but I would say our model again is more like corporate talent acquisition where you know what you're going to get your Monday through Friday. You build relationships with the hiring managers. Like the skill sets are pretty consistent, right? You're supported by delivery management on the Lucas James side. So I would expect our future attrition is similar to corporate talent acquisition versus agency.
Why do you think there is such a shortage for recruiters in particular right now? Because it just seems like it's like every agency I talk to is looking for recruiters. Every corporate company I talk to is looking for recruiters. So what do you think? I mean, I guess just in your own opinion, do you think just a lot of people dropped out because of COVID, or maybe people got furloughed and thought, okay, that's it, I'm out of recruiting? Why has this massive shortage of recruiters, like why has this happened in such a quick amount of time? And like, what do you see as a viable solution for that, for the industry?
I just think I don't think it's a shortage. I don't think people left the industry. I would say like maybe there's more demand than February of 2020, meaning companies are like, hey, let's try to do this in-house if we can. And there's more confidence on the agency and service provider side like us, where we're like, okay, there's market demand here. Like I'm going to grow my team and I have confidence within that. So I don't think there's any like major shifts there. I do feel like we're in a environment where because of that shift that happened last year, companies went from standard playbook to, which is disrespectful, hey, let's lay off all the recruiters, they're not important. That's kind of what happened last year. To now, okay, now I need the recruiters and I need the agencies. And I don't care if like you're a competitor, I don't care if like you're on the corporate side or whatever, like let's all lock arms and look at that and kind of laugh a little bit. Because now we're in demand and attracting really good talent in a market like this where everybody's bouncing back at the same time in every industry. So I don't think this is going to last for forever, and I'm very aware of that. And we're strategically like planning our growth strategy around that. But I do think we're in an environment that, we're still kind of like catching this wave of, but bunch of recruiters got laid off, bunch are getting hired at the same time. And like the markets just in general is picking up all at the same time.
One thing that I think happens a lot with contingent recruiting and the partnership that they have with clients is just candidate experience gets dropped. So talk to me about how candidate experience is improved with the clients that you work with based on a relationship that you have with them. I mean, how is candidate experience impacted? And what's the benefit then for those companies that choose a solution like yours compared to that type of contingent model?
Well, I think the most efficient, highest candidate experience kind of way to do talent acquisition is with an internal recruiter that's got tenure, that really knows the business, that has relationships internally with all the hiring managers, can answer questions, and like truly like bleeds the company's values, right? And then when you're dealing with an agency, you know, there's certain guardrails that you have to have up, right? So I remember like back in the day, like we would never say the client name to the candidate until like the last minute. Why? Because like, oh, we didn't want them to like apply on the road
directly, right?
and then
it's
cut
the
us
worst
out.
nightmare.
It's ridiculous from a candidate experience standpoint.
It really
right?
is.
And we're not working with our customers, so we're dealing with this dynamic of like, oh, well, if it's in the client database, then we submit this candidate, like we don't get the fee for it. So like there's just this like negative kind of just butting heads kind of style. So with us, we play the internal talent acquisition department role. Like we represent ourselves as our client on LinkedIn. We have a client email address. We're in the client applicant tracking system. Like if they apply to a client job, like we're probably the one picking up the phone at the end of the day. Like we're only dealing with that client. We're not dealing with like 10 clients at once if you're a recruiter on my team. So like you're getting that kind of like internal candidate experience vibe when you're working with us. And the beauty is, you know, we talk about who our clients are. You know, we say, hey, XYZ company is hiring and they're a client. We're partnered with them. Like they're awesome. You know, whereas like in my old world, we were trying to hide that information. Like,
totally.
You know, the candidates were like, all right, where's this? Like, this is my life, man. Like, can you at least tell me the name so I could like check out the website? I'm not going to screw you. It's just that whole dynamic. So we're a little bit more on the corporate side in that respect as well.
Well, it's the same too. Like when I think of, you know, you have that 3x3 situation or whatever, where it's like, you got to have, you know, you want 3 candidates submitted to 3 clients. So you're kind of looking out for your own back, making sure that you're covered on it and making sure that you're the one who's submitting all of the candidates, but you're submitting them in multiple places. And so I think it becomes really hard to know like who you're actually working for, because you're kind of representing the candidate, you're kind of representing the client, but with your model, it's like you're 100% representing the client. You're able to represent them. Obviously, you're looking out for candidates as well within that, because you're transparent with it. So I love that. So what do you?
Let me say this real quick. The worst like version of this in the agency model is the VMS MSP.
Yeah.
For larger companies, makes a ton of sense for big companies. It lowers spend. It, you know, creates efficiencies within the data and, you know, the partners that you're working with. But like, if anybody's been a recruiter working on recs for a VMS system at a large company, and you can't say the name of the company, you don't have any interaction with the hiring manager to see exactly what they're looking for. You're just kind of like tossing it. And there's been just a drastic trend in the industry since I've been here 15 plus years of larger organizations going that route. And that just puts more pressure on the candidate experience and the agency being able to support that customer and everything. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
no, I agree 100%. What do you, I know obviously I'm really big on marketing and branding and building that brand. How has that impacted your business? Because I know that's something that you put yourself out there a lot. You've done podcasts. Obviously, you're on a live stream right now and a podcast. But from a marketing side, like how have you kind of done things differently potentially from what you've done in the past now that you're running the business and you have your own business?
Well, I love what your team is doing. I think like it's an underappreciated aspect of the recruiting business. And when I started, like we had computers, Career Builder and Monster just started, but like I heard stories of like we would just wait around the fax machine waiting for resumes to kind of get put in there and stuff like that.
Wow.
And you know, you're dropping off donuts, you're doing word of mouth, you're dropping off business cards, like all that stuff. And I think, you know, I've always been a student of business and the game, and especially like the 2.5 years where I was like prepping to launch this business, I understood the importance of like the digital presence, right? And I think as a buyer, if I put myself in the shoes of like our customers or our candidates that we're reaching out to, when I buy a product, before I buy that product, I type it into Google. I like look at the reviews on Amazon. I I might follow them for a little bit before I make a purchase decision, right? And I feel like that's happening in the B2B space more and more and more. And then once LinkedIn made the conversion from like profile search tool only to business content platform, I think it created an opportunity for a lot of us to really get our name out there and our word out there if we were willing to put investment there. So one of the first investments that I made was with a marketing firm. I actually just started paying myself recently, but like invested in a marketing firm, did the website, they ghostwrite articles for us. All of our LinkedIn stuff that we put out there, I have a hand in it, but like it's automated. So we have a lot of items that are going out there on a consistent basis. And I think for me, taking the approach of we're the new player in a 20,000 company industry, like I have to be doing things to differentiate myself. So we do have a differentiated model, but I got to get the word out there. So if anyone that's listening Googles us or follows us on LinkedIn, send me a LinkedIn connection request. You can kind of follow what we're doing here. And to your point, it's, we have differentiated content, podcasts, audio clips. I'm on video talking about stuff. We have team members talking about stuff. We have articles. We're showing up in SEO. The power of the internet, you have to leverage to stay relevant. And so, some of the companies that aren't doing that, they're just going to get passed up by the companies that are. And I know that, your team is making waves and doing that and helping support organizations do that as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we always just look at it as you have the ability now to be able to take your offline reputation and scale that, it's really unprecedented. So, I even just think about a platform like TikTok, for example. Like you literally have the ability to put a video out, and it's hard to control, but you have the ability based on that algorithm to get millions and millions of views, hours of watch time. And it's just new. I mean, you haven't been able to, 10 years ago, you could not have done that. You'd have had to pay for some sort of ad space. And so I do think it's going to be, it's obviously going to be more and more relevant. Curious too, then, I know we're going to wrap up here, but, for people, let's say if you're looking for somebody for your team, which you are, if someone's out there, what are some of the telltale indicators that working in your type of model might be a better fit, or like what are some of those trends? Like if you were to speak to one of those people, like what type of person, maybe what type of what could be going on in their career to make them incentivized to come and work for a company like yours, if that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
So yeah, by nature, we're a consulting firm. We're optimizing talent acquisition for our clients. So like our team needs to be pretty good at what they're doing. And we're not at the stage yet, we're 3 years in, where we have a robust like training department to like bring entry level people up right away. So typically we're looking for folks with at least 4 or 5 years of experience. We have folks with 20, 30 plus on the team. Our team members are interacting with our customer a lot more than in an agency setting where you might be sitting behind like a recruiting leader or an account manager on the sales side. So you'll be interacting with our customer base quite a bit, strategizing, follow-up, building relationship capital, rapport. So we look for folks that can do that, and we look for that in the interview process. And I think for anybody that's been in the agency world that really enjoyed the team win, hey, every time we grow, that creates an opportunity and growth opportunity for someone, a promotion opportunity. You'll get that here. But also if you've been burnt out in your previous life, you might enjoy this model. So I think, when you talk about like digital marketing and branding, one opportunity for us is to really focus on like the talent branding side of Lucas James and what we're doing. And I think that's probably what we'll focus on over the next 6 to 12 months, because we're looking for people and we can't hire them fast enough.
Yeah, I love it. Well, anyone who's out there, if you're listening to this now, if you're listening to the recording, definitely follow and connect with Tim as well. And I'll put the links to his LinkedIn profile and then the Lucas James profile as well. I am curious, where did you come up with the name Lucas James?
Oh, so Lucas and James are my boys. So Lucas is 6 and James is 4.
I love that.
So when I started this, they were super small. James was just a baby, and
so cool.
They're starting to understand, kind of what it is, but it'll be cool when they're much older, just to see what we're building here.
I kind of thought that was my thought when you told me you had 2 boys, but awesome. I love that. inspired by what matters most. So I think that is super cool. Well, Tim, I've really appreciated your time. I love the insights that you brought. I would look, anyone who is out there, if you're listening to this and you're in that situation where you're burned out, sick of it, you're thinking, okay, is there some more value that I could be bringing to clients? I really do believe that this type of model is going to be more used. I really do believe that it just brings so much value to the clients, and it saves them money, stronger relationships. So if you're in that position and you're just thinking like, is there something in between, like a contingent, retain? Is there something else? Is there a different type of way? Definitely connect with Tim, reach out, let him know that you heard him on the HeadHunter Hideout or the podcast. And yeah, definitely do that. And appreciate your time, man. I really love what you guys are doing. It's going to be exciting to see what the next 12 to 24 months holds for you guys. It would not surprise me if I invited you onto the show again and you're like, yeah, we've got 1,000 employees. Like, I could totally see that happening, and it's awesome to see that. So thanks so much for your time, and appreciate you.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it, man. And everyone, thanks so much for listening. Talk soon.
See you guys.